When Sonic and Shadow Generations was revealed, there was a little bit of skepticism, but also, for once, some hope. We all saw we were getting a Sonic Generations remaster, but when this part of the cutscene broke out, we all knew something real was about to happen. And then we micro-analyzed the trailer. We saw really great spectacle, but we also saw some linearity. We also saw a homing attack delay like Sonic Frontiers Cyberspace. Was this going to be just another step in the right direction for the franchise, or were we ready for something big to happen? The answer to that question has been solved, and I think we got ourselves a great Sonic game on our hands. Sonic and Shadow Generations very well might be the greatest 3D Sonic game of all time. This is the sentiment amongst a lot of people in the fan base. It seems like everyone is happy and thrilled with this game. So let's start with the Shadow Generations campaign, because let's face it, we played Sonic Generations a million times. The beginning of the game follows directly from the Sonic and Shadow Dark Beginnings prologue animation, where Shadow is getting a signal from the Ark. He's getting memories of Maria, Gerald, and Black Doom. Is his worst fear true? If you watched any trailers for this game, you would know that his worst fear is true. Black Doom is back. And he is uglier than ever. Now, don't get me wrong, the model looks great, the animation looks great, but this guy is ugly and this guy is evil. We need to defeat him. So we start the game and Shadow has just landed in Space Colony Ark. Rouge calls him up and asks him if he's coming to Sonic's birthday party, which he says, ugh, why do I have to go to that? You ever have some birthday party or family event or something you just don't want to go to? And there's that person there and they just get under your skin so much and you just don't want to talk to them and everyone forces you. Yeah, that's basically what Shadow's feeling. Found the disturbance and we start the Space Colony Ark level. We eventually catch up with Black Doom, and what's interesting about this is he's causing all these disruptions before the Time Eater is even revealed. And we know this because after we beat the first level, everything goes back to normal and then the Time Eater actually reveals himself. One of the coolest things and one of the few elements of the plot here, because actually there isn't too much going on with Shadow Generations. Not too much significant really truly happens. I'll explain why in a little bit. But we find that there's a fake Chaos Emerald that Tails left. Sonic Adventure 2 actually was still at the Ark after all this time. I thought that was a really neat detail and callback. It's kind of like a subtle callback, whereas I know some people on Sonic Twitter get a little upset that they sometimes reference past games and stuff like that. Personally, I'm a huge fan of it, but I think this was a cool way to do it and keep the lore cohesive. And so the story of Sonic and Shadow Generations begins. Similar to the regular Sonic Generations, you're in a white space hub world, which is a similar domain or similar realm, and we have to go beat Act 2, which every level contains an Act 1, which is fully 3D, and every level contains an Act 2, which is fully 2D. After we beat that, one of the other major reveals of the plot that we've kind of seen from trailers is that Gerald Robotnik and Maria are allowed to be alive in this world because time is in flux. And that's when it gets a little emotional. The game also gives us context for Shadow's backstory in general, which is kind of what the story serves a purpose for in this game. The story of this game is not really to add anything new to the lore necessarily. We get really good character interactions. We get really good character dialogue. You even find out some interesting little facts about Shadow and his relationship with Gerald and Maria. Nothing new necessarily gets added to the story because this does take place in the past while another mainline Sonic game is going on. And then another aspect of the gameplay loop gets revealed. So in each successive zone that we clear, we eventually go to this Black Doom portal thing, which gives us a new power. In this case, we got our Doom Spear. You'll find more about the Doom powers later because it's one of the major selling points of the game. We did Act 1, we did Act 2, we saw some story cutscenes, we unlock a new Doom power, and then we traverse a little bit through the open zone in order to get to our next world. The open zone is the formula that Sega used in Sonic Frontiers, and this is what they want the mainline franchise to be going forward for at least the next decade. While it's similar to Sonic Frontiers, it kind of functions different in principle because Sonic Frontiers is about exploring the open world, and that's like 70% of the game, and exploring the open world is something you do at your own pace. You can really do whatever you want in it, whereas in Shadow Generations, the primary function of the open zone is basically another obstacle to get to the next zone. And also, it's an area where you can complete random challenges in order to get collectibles like music, museum pages, Gerald's journal, and stuff like that. The open zone exploration is a lot more optional in this game, at least in my opinion. But nonetheless, I think the best part of the open zone is the fact that we're able to see what the platforming philosophy is going to be like for the Sonic team going forward. But back to the story of Sonic and Shadow Generations, we end up going to Rail Canyon / Bullet Station for Acts 1 and 2. And then the final aspect of the gameplay loop is revealed. Then find out this is a very Sonic Generations inspired game, and we have to do mini challenge acts in order to unlock keys to be able to take out the boss. I'd also quickly like to point out that the challenge acts in this game are actually pretty fun. Feels like the devs of this game watch YouTuber challenge videos. Like, I like to make pretty creative and crazy like challenge videos for Sonic games. You guys haven't checked those type of videos out, definitely go check them out. You'll have challenges like complete a level with one ring or collect X amount of dash rings, hit X amount of projectiles, battles use chaos control or something. There's a nice variety of them, and they're definitely fun. You are forced to do them, but I will say this. They're definitely more fun than the Sonic Generations challenge acts. Following us beating the first boss, we finally get a Black Doom reveal where he shows himself, because the entire time he's been teasing us throughout the campaign, but we still haven't even seen his true motivation or the actual Black Doom himself. Now we have a gameplay loop. You beat Act 1, you beat Act 2. Black Doom grants you some new powers that he's basically trying to brainwash Shadow into becoming more powerful that he can use as a pawn. You also go through some story cutscenes, and then you go through the open zone to progress to the next level that you find every single challenge act in the game, which you have to do this time, and then you progress into the next zone. Rinse and repeat. And that's basically most of the story. After we beat 4 out of the 6 unique level zones that we see and defeat 2 out of the 3 bosses we face, we get to actually meet Maria and Gerald face to face, which is a super emotional moment for Shadow, and I think it's one of the coolest things that we get to see as Sonic fans, because we've had this story in the back of our heads about Shadow and Maria and the whole backstory with Gerald Robotnik. And Shadow, unfortunately, had such a tragic past that it's cool to see that he kind of gets some form of closure with them and gets to see them face to face. Like, how would a present Shadow interact with Maria and Gerald? And it's just honestly so great to see. And that's where the biggest highlights come from in this game as far as the story goes. I would say it's definitely the characterization of Shadow. It's the character dialogue. It's the moments between them. Team sells it with incredible animation. Also works really well. I don't know what happened between Sonic Frontiers and this game, but they stepped up everything in that department. One of the other notable story moments that we get is like a little battle between Sonic, and I don't want to necessarily spoil the significance behind it, but it does show a lot about Shadow's character, and also gives us context behind that battle, who actually won in the canon, whatever the case may be. Other than that, we finish up with the last 2 acts. We get more wholesome and awesome moments between Gerald, Maria, and Shadow. We take on the big bad Black Doom. Shadow says his goodbyes almost abruptly, and then we find out where Shadow was prior to this cutscene. So as far as the story of this game goes, there's a couple of things I'd like to note. I feel like this story is kind of like a mini rehash of Shadow's story, while throwing small little wrinkles about his relationship with Gerald and Maria, and kind of giving us a little bit of extra nuance. And the story is probably best experienced by someone who is new to the franchise. I think older veteran players like myself, you will definitely like the story and you'll appreciate the characterization and dialogue, but at the end of the day, you might be wanting just a little bit more. It's almost like the game is so good. When you see that final cutscene in the game, you're like, wait, that's it? Like, can I just get like one more cutscene? Can I get a little more? I think you kind of realize, and hey, listen, this isn't like rocket science. This game is meant to just be a celebration of Shadow, as opposed to kind of like adding anything new to Shadow's story. And it's not even necessarily the climax or the final battle that I think is like the height or the peak or the reason why we play this story, the absolute highlight. I think the highlight of the story is actually the second to last cutscene before we fight Black Doom. That cutscene absolutely gave me chills, and the fact that there are cutscenes that give you chills in a game that's meant to really just celebrate Shadow, bring new people into the franchise, especially when you contrast it with what the story is in Sonic Generations. The Shadow story does a really good job of keeping you invested, educating you about the history of Shadow, but veteran players might want a little more. You know, it's a little short. I just wanted it to keep going. I'm sad that it ended. Story makes a nice contrast between Shadow's past and also his future. While initially before the story, Shadow is said to have moved on from his past, but maybe he doesn't quite have the closure that he wants when everything comes back to haunt him in this story. While Black Doom is trying to corrupt Shadow with the Doom powers and helping him fulfill his original destiny, which is to become a weapon, Maria and Gerald, his true family, the ones he was supposed to move on from, are helping him realize the light. We see this in moments when Shadow gets consumed by the Doom powers, but eventually chooses to restrain, like when he's fighting against Sonic, or when he's fighting the Black Arms aliens and his eyes turn red in front of Maria. By the end of the story, he fully embraces it and even cracks a smile, letting us know that he will live out to fulfill Maria's wish and let his anger go. So now we know what Shadow's motivation is going to be going forward. He's going to live and fight for Maria's wish, and her memory will live on in his heart. He won't just think about the tragedy and how it traumatized him. He will be thinking about the light that she brought into his life. And after he says his final goodbyes, we truly do get closure to this arc for Shadow, and now we can move forward. I think it's a very huge stark contrast from how they ended it in Shadow the Hedgehog 2005, and I feel like a lot of people thought that Shadow just moved on from his past. He just throws the picture away from Gerald and Maria, and that's it. It's over. What I like about the new take on Shadow's like closure, I guess, for the Maria and Gerald arc as opposed to the Shadow game, is that he acknowledges his past, he cherishes his past, and it's a motivation for him. But after this, he truly is able to move on without just not caring. I feel like the idea that he doesn't care about his past, which was kind of what the position was for Shadow, it was like, oh, he just moved on from his past, he doesn't care. This allows him to move on from his past in a much more realistic way. It's pretty sad because you know he wanted to change the course of Gerald and Maria Maria's fate, but at the same time, to leave them in white space would just be cruel, and that's no way to live. So it had to happen this way. Shadow finally got to say his goodbyes, and this can truly be put behind him. But yeah, like I said before, this isn't one of those stories that just like contains major spoilers. So new fans will absolutely love it. Old fans will like it, but also at the same time, they're gonna want some more, which is a testament to how good the things were that we did get. Wow, what a yap fest. Can you guys tell that I like Sonic stories? By the way, make sure to subscribe to the channel with all notifications if you like more Sonic lore type videos. But let's get into the gameplay of the game because, yeah, games are made for the gameplay. So before we get into the gameplay, I want to talk about first and foremost, I'm so happy that this game not only performed well on Metacritic for a 3D Sonic game, 8 out of 10, which is a very respectable and impressive score, but also at the same time, we can finally say it's not good, but I liked it, but, or in the case of a game like Sonic Frontiers, oh, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, listen, I personally really liked Frontiers, but it's hard to deny that this game was a little bit divisive for most people. But Shadow Generation separates itself in the fact that a lot more people unanimously like this game with much less criticism and feedback. This game isn't a step into the right direction, and that's because we are already there. From a design perspective, the new gimmick of this game, or the new selling point, is the brand new Doom powers, which Shadow is being corrupted by Black Doom in order to become his weapon. After he gains each power, he gets more and more closer with becoming what Black Doom originally intended for him to be. So the first power is Doom Spears. What this ability is an improvement on Shadow's Chaos Spear, which is just a projectile. On the outset, it seems really simple. You see an enemy, boom, Doom Spear, and now he's stunned, and now you can homing attack him. But it's also used for a lot more than that. Doom Spear gets upgraded, and instead of firing 1 Doom Spear, now you can fire 5 if you hold down the Y button. Now, in some instances, this ability can be used as an alternative to a slide reactive challenge. For example, instead of pressing B to slide under something, sometimes there's a switch where you have to press Y to shoot it in order to unlock a gate or something like that. So that's why I kind of make that comparison, although that's not 100% what it really is. Also, furthermore, you have some levels and challenges where you have to shoot at targets with your Doom Spear in order to complete the level, like in Rail Canyon. I think this is a really good use of it because you can also use it on grind rails, which is pretty fun. In addition to that, the Doom Sphere can be used on enemies that you otherwise couldn't homing attack. For example, you have to Doom Spear this enemy because otherwise, if you try to homing attack it, you will get hit. So the Doom Spear adds more reactive gameplay for the player and more input. The inputs and gameplay of the game is extremely smooth. We'll get into that a little bit later. One final tactic the Doom Sphere is really good for. This is speedrunning tech, and this is a sneak peek at a future video I have coming, so let's try to keep this secret. But the Doom Sphere can also be used to preserve your forward momentum in midair. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Sonic and Shadow Generation speedruns that come out are going to be insane. Doom Sphere is something that can really keep you on your toes, provide more input for the player, and even has some speedrunning tech, so it's a great power. Let's move on to the next one. The next power up on the list is the Doom Blast, and the Doom Blast is one of those abilities that's also going to provide a lot of replayability for players. When you use this ability, you're able to beat up a Black Arms alien and then launch them, but you can also point it to where you want to go. In my opinion, the Doom Blast is kind of similar to the Laser Wisp in Sonic Colors, but the thing is, I really do like this Wisp, and it's a little bit different in Shadow Generations. If you ever see one of these in a level, make sure you hit it. If you hold down the homing attack button, you can now aim this wherever you want to go. So it's like, if I want to go, hey, let's go over here. You can aim it to wherever you want to go in the map, and it gives you a lot more freedom. You can unlock a lot of shortcuts doing this. You can also unlock new routes. It's going to be crazy to see some of the routes that Shadow Generations players find for months and months after this game comes out. The next Doom power on the list is the Doom Surf, and when I first saw the trailer for this, I was like, why is this in the game? This doesn't really look that fun or cool. But guess what? I was completely wrong. This is actually one of the most fun Doom powers in the game. So basically, when you go onto water, you automatically assume the Doom Surf, and the good thing about it is it controls pretty smoothly. You also can use it to hit jumps, which are fun to hit. In addition to that, the Quick Step has this smooth little like attack that you can do. Sometimes in some missions you have to hit crates or whatever, or you can use it in boss battles like the Metal Sonic boss fight to hit the crates at him. And for some reason, I can't describe it, but it's really fun to use. It feels smooth, it feels satisfying, and it's not going to be that prominent for speedruns or anything like that, but in the short times that you do have to use it, it is fun. The next power up on the list is the Doom Morph, and this is the one power up that, you know, I didn't personally love, and I think most people can kind of agree with that. This one allows you to turn into like a little squid octopus thing whenever you see the purple energy on the floor, and it kind of has some similar functions as that spinning like spin dash wall climbing Wisp in Sonic Colors, as well as the Generations Planet Wisp section. And you know, anything similar to this is gonna definitely make some players scared. Regardless though, I haven't really spent enough time with this to truly understand it, because I feel like some people who have replayed the game and gotten some time to really master it have said, actually, it's not that bad. But I do feel like it's a little bit of a pace breaker. When you're on the little purple sections, you can use it to swing as well, which sometimes feels like it doesn't work as well. You can also use it to boost and kind of like launch yourself off of certain platforms. I think I got to spend more time with it, but this is something that definitely drags down the game a little bit for me. It's a great game, but hey, listen, not everything can be perfect, am I right? The final power-up is the Doom Wings, and the Doom Wings is something that was advertised heavily in the trailers. In Shadow Generations is actually more of an end game reward. So what this allows you to do is fly in a straight line, which is pretty cool. It's essentially like a free roam supersonic. That's what I would say is the equivalent of this ability. It's going to allow for the most creative type of skips because as long as you have rings, you're able to go pretty far with this. As a matter of fact, it's so broken that there's actually a separate category for the Doom Wing. So you can get a time for speedrunning the level with a Doom Wing on or off. So if that doesn't encourage replayability for every single stage, then I don't know what else will. Despite how advertised this ability was, it's essentially an endgame feature. Now, as long as you have boost and as long as your ring count doesn't deplete to 0, you can keep using this ability. And it's a simple flight mechanic. Look at it right here. Look at my guy flying through the level. Now, this isn't a Doom power, but Shadow has access to his Chaos Control as one of the main abilities that you can get in the game. If you attack enemies, you will fill up your Chaos Control meter, and Chaos Control allows you to stop time. Now, I'm a sucker for time stop mechanics in video games, so I knew I was going to enjoy this, but I didn't realize it was going to be this cool. Chaos Control is probably one of the most creative abilities that you can use in the game because there is some risk and reward to using it. Sometimes it's better to use it than other times. For example, you have these little projectiles that are coming down, so you don't want to get hit by these, so you're going to use Chaos Control to slow down time so you can easily traverse through this path. But in this clip right here, I used the Chaos Control too early. If you look to the left, there's like a little projectile that's going upwards. Had I used it a little bit later, I could jump on top of it and probably unlock a new route. The amount of times that I went through the game and I'm like, I used Chaos Control too early is astonishing. So it's like, I got to keep replaying these levels to find out where to use it. And it feels like Chaos Control is awesome also because it takes away a lot of the scriptedness or the automatedness that you come to expect from newer Sonic games. It gives the players agency and choice to carve their own paths as opposed to just going on some dash panels and letting the game decide for you. To further elaborate on how much choice the game gives you, like look at this little section right here. You can actually jump off the rail a little bit early. This may not be the best example here, but it's really astonishing because that little jump right there would not be possible in previous Sonic games. Or even this section right here, you're already able to jump off the rails. Like typically in any Sonic game, that part would be fully automated. The fact that I can jump off, while it's not a huge deal, makes a big difference because it feels like I do have total control over the character. There's many examples of this throughout the game, but that's just a small way to highlight it. But back to Chaos Control, in addition to having good timing and reflex and instincts to be able to stop time to create additional platforms and stuff like that, there's also green points on the map that can be used almost to replace the light speed dash and be able to give you a fast little shortcut, but you got to make sure that you use your Chaos Control on time and you know when to use it. That's the risk versus reward factor. Sometimes, again, it can be risky to use Chaos Control because you can stop the platforms or you can stop the enemies a little too early and it will disrupt your route. So now that we have all these new moves at our disposal, it's also worth pointing out that the game controls really well. Now, I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of a nitpick because I feel like the rail launching was nerfed, and you'll find that out pretty quickly on the first level. For example, if you want to go on this rail right here, oh, I see another one. In Sonic Frontiers, I would have been able to have gotten to that rail a lot quicker. However, the controls kind of make up for this. You don't necessarily have to rail launch and skip half the level like Sonic Frontiers. The controls of the game are definitely optimized for the level design, whereas in Frontiers, a lot of the levels were reused from Generations. It's like we're trying to make the level fit around the controls in Frontiers, whereas in Generations, the controls are fit around the level. It does feel like a refined cyberspace, but because the levels are linear and obviously a little bit more refined, it really mitigates all the things that people don't like about cyberspace to begin with, in addition to the fact that the controls have been tightened up a little bit. Speaking of the level design, let's talk about how good it is and give you just a brief example of what I mean. The levels are a lot more linear, but it's a good linear. Look at how many different alternative paths that you see just in this shot right here. If I want to, I can go left on the spring, but I can also zoom ahead and go over here. Now, I'm confronted with more choices again. I can go right here, or I can take the left path, or I can go up here if I want. That's 3 different paths right there. The level design in this game is all about branching paths. It's not branching paths for the sake of branching paths. I'm going to play this level so many times and try to figure out how to play this differently every time. We can actually hit this rail right here and go left, or we can go this way, and there's another path up here, and now we're in this little cave. Do you guys see how much creativity they allowed for in this game? It's quite insane. Almost every single segment of every level in this game provides you with at least 2 or 3 different ways to complete. For example, I can go through here, or I could have went the other way. Here's one of my favorite skips as well. Let's go up here and hit this spring. The camera's telling me to go left, But actually, if you go straight, you have more paths over here. So it's like, it really never ends. And because we have all these different routes, we also have these different abilities. I'm going to say it again, we're going to be replaying this game for a long time. Despite the fact that Shadow Generations is only 3 hours long, we are going to get a lot more than 3 hours worth of playtime from this game. I think it's almost better for gaming companies in 2024 to stop padding out their games and just making the games fun and replayable. That way, the 3 hours that we play can extend long beyond that, and in addition to that, be really good and polished like Shadow Generations is. The double jump also is really good too. Like, the double jump, I think, is a necessity in a lot of platforming games, so that also feels good to do as well. Coupled in with the Doom powers, these are some of the greatest levels that we've ever seen in this Adventure Boost formula hybrid that they got going on with Frontier Cyberspace as well as Sonic and Shadow Generations. Let's also talk about how good the 2D sections are. Now, initially, I was really bummed out that the bounce stomp didn't make it into this game, as well as that like elevated air boost that you had from Sonic Frontier Cyberspace, which almost acts like a third jump because it gives you a lot more air. That was nerfed in this game, and also the stomp bounce was also nerfed in this game, or actually removed from the game. For 2D sections, I genuinely loved how these abilities were able to help me platform, and I like more movement options as opposed to less. The reason why I love Sonic Frontier so much is because of the movement options in the game. If you watch any of my speed runs of it, you'll see how fluid the movement can really get in that game. That is mostly open zone controls for Sonic Frontiers though, because the cyberspace controls can be a little bit janky. That's definitely something that everyone wanted improvement on, like the polish of those controls, and Shadow Generations definitely delivers in that department. It makes it a lot more enjoyable than cyberspace overall. But back to Shadow Generations, having those abilities initially bummed me out, but then you realize the level design once again accounts for these abilities being missing. In the 2D sections of this game, I feel like it's so smooth and methodical. I'm hitting the boost, then I'm pressing A, then I'm pressing B to stomp, and then I'm just like resetting and kind of just getting in a really good rhythm. The levels really allow you to keep your pace. Coupled in with the new abilities, again, there's just even more ways to keep your pace as well. I don't feel like I'm stopping and doing clunky, boring platforming like 2D Sonic Generations at times. That was one of my biggest criticisms of Sonic Generations 2D sections, and why I actually liked Cyberspace 2D more than Sonic Generations. I know it's a hot take, but there's no clunk. It's just straight rhythm and speed. The 2D sections in this game are also more like 2.5D like Sonic Unleashed. It's a lot more reactive as opposed to sitting there with the tank-like jumping controls of Sonic Generations. This is just straight smooth. Yeah, the bounce stomp isn't there, and I think the game would actually be better with it. A lot of the times, the level isn't really throwing obstacles in your way that much where you would need it. It would be better with it. 2D levels are designed to be a lot more reactive, and there's a lot of 2.5D, which a lot of people loved from Sonic Unleashed, so it doesn't really matter. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but if you're watching this B-roll clip of me playing the 2D level, you will notice that I literally did not stop once. I just kept my pace the entire time. That's why it's so good. There's no better feeling than not stopping in 2D sections in Sonic games because you're doing so well. But the fact you're able to maintain this pace and maintain that flow means that you don't actually need those other abilities. You actually just needed some polish with good level design. Only other criticism that I think I have with the game is the absence of the lightspeed dash. I just feel like when I see a Trail of Rings, I'd like to be able to lightspeed dash it. So there's a couple of minor things that I would have liked in the game, but at the same time, these are just nitpicks. I just can't stop gushing about, for the first time in a long time, we got a well-made, polished 3D Sonic product with no jank, no BS, no glitches. This is an extremely well-made game. I ran into no glitches or no issues, and the game looks visually stunning and also runs just as smooth. But let's talk about the last thing that they put in the game, and that is the Sonic Frontiers inspired open zone hub world. As we stated earlier in the review, and as many Sonic fans know, open zone is going to be the gameplay formula for Sonic going forward. The fact that they included it in Shadow Generations just shows that they kind of want to show us a little bit about what open zone can do, and hey, maybe even collect feedback for what the next game can be. Open zone in this game primarily functions as an optional thing that you can do to collect music notes and stuff like that. However, you do have to engage with it somewhat, because in order to get to some of the challenge acts that you're going to have to do, as well as some of the levels and the boss battles, you're going to have to do some platforming to get there. So in that instance, when I was doing my initial playthrough, I did feel a little bit bogged down by it, primarily due to the fact that I was playing this game extremely late. I just wanted to kind of speed run it, so maybe I wasn't appreciating it the same way I should have. At times, it kind of felt like an obstacle to get to the next level. The reason why I think open zone works in Sonic Frontiers is because 90% of the game is based around interacting with the open world at your own pace and doing what you want to in order to unlock progression, whereas this forces you to do open zone in a more linear route. However, after I beat the game and I started interacting with the hub world more, now that I actually have reason to explore, I'm like, wait, this is actually pretty sick. There's a lot of different ways you can traverse through the world. You also have a ton of collectibles that you can get, so you're gonna have to be creative. You have little time trials scattered throughout the world with additional challenges as well. It's a mini open zone. When you really play it, you can get lost lost in it. After I was recording this video, I started running around the open zone mindlessly for like an hour straight, and I'm like, oh wait, now I get it. I like this a lot. So when they do the next open zone game, the next open zone game will be built around open zone. So as far as progression goes, I think it'll be a little bit smoother, because in this game, the bread and butter is really the linear stages. Despite the fact that the level design in the open zone is good, my main focus was doing the linear stages, so that's why I feel like it got in the way a little bit. So picture this, Sonic Frontiers 2, or whatever you want to call it, if it has open zone at its peak and also has similar level design and quality and polish as the linear stages in Shadow Generations, we might be looking at the best Sonic game of all time. As a matter of fact, I think Sonic and Shadow Generations makes a case for the best 3D Sonic game of all time already. So with that being said, they did a masterful job with Sonic and Shadow Generations. I could not be more happy with the product that we got. From the improved writing and dialogue, the amazing animations in the game, the incredible level design, the freedom, the creativity, the passion, like everything that they poured into this game makes this a definitive Sonic game for almost anyone to play, coupled in the fact that we get a Generations remaster with largely not that much change. Between that game being included and this absolute gem of a game being what it is, if you're on the fence about it, I would highly recommend picking up this game if you are a fan of the Sonic franchise, or even if you're not, because I think this game is going to do a lot of good for new fans coming in. Genuinely could not think of a better first impression new fans that watch Sonic Movie 3 will have when playing Sonic and Shadow Generations. This is the perfect introduction to new fans, but also veteran fans are going to love this game as well. I think my only complaint about it is that I want more. I'm already thinking about the next Sonic game, because I think based off of the framework of this game and Frontiers going forward, we have an incredible building block for the future, considering Sonic Team has shown that they're capable of making an incredible game already. I've only played this game for 2 days, and I know it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. If you have not replayed this game or replayed the stages several times, then you have not played this game correctly. Keep playing this game because it seems like it's only going to get better and better as time goes on as well. Which is why after I beat the game for the first time, I was sitting at like an 8 out of 10, but after having more time to play the game and actually go back into the levels with the Doom powers, I think we can safely say that this game is an 8.5 out of 10. Potentially even a 9, and honestly with room to improve if they keep adding level DLC packs and stuff like that also, and I just keep playing the game.